Mort Cooper, your host on Change Your Voice, Change Your Life. In studio with me is Dr. John Curtis, and he has come up with the title of today's program, and that title is
Cures versus No Cures.
What is that all about, John?
Well, you know, this is a field that you're in is a crazy field. I mean, I was talking with somebody at the National...
My field is... what is my field?
It's a bizarre field, the whole area of speech pathology, because I thought that the goal of these fields was really to find a cure for serious conditions. And you know that one of the most serious conditions in your field is spasmodic dysphonia, or the strangled voice.
What is that?
That's where you lose your voice entirely.
What does it sound like?
Sounds kind of like this.
Who has it?
I would talk like this.
Who?
And that sound I just made is the actual voice today of the president of the National Spasmodic Dysphonia Organization, the leading nonprofit or agency that disseminates the current and state-of-the-art information, yes, about spasmodic dysphonia. And this president, who has received Botox injections, of course I don't really know how many she's received, but what I do know about it is that
I spoke with her too by phone.
And her voice is literally unintelligible, and yet she is advocating and enthusiastic. I mean, euphoric is the way to describe it. She's euphoric about Botox. Can you explain that to me?
Well, she's got this thing about Botox. She wrote a book about coping with the condition called spasmodic dysphonia. It's not a put down, and it's not a negative. This is a person who is dedicated to helping other people. She believes that they have to live with this condition for life. The spasmodic dysphonia is called the strangled voice. I call it the monster voice. You can call it strangled strain voice, whatever you want. It was first described by Traub in 1871 as nervous hoarseness. When you hear and use that voice, you understand why Traub came up with that that name, nervous hoarseness.
Isn't it almost the equivalent today in the medical field of having leprosy? SD is almost like a human form of leprosy, because not only are they treated like they are from another planet, they're often attribute mental illness to these people where it does not exist, and yet the medical profession, from the inception of this description of this condition from 1871 up through like 1960, viewed this condition as a mental disorder.
That's right.
You treated these people back in the days when they were regarding these people as mental or something.
Lepers.
Lepers. So what did they tell you about SD patients when you were in training?
Well, number one, the number one thing is be very careful with these people who are talking like that, because they can be another Count Dracula and get out there and give you one bite and you're gone. I'm serious, folks. Stay away from them. Be very careful. My stay at UCLA on the staff from 1961 to about 1969 as staff and faculty was quite taken with the fact that these individuals suffering this terrible voice affliction were not all there, and that was a training I received. My colleagues in the field had the same view, just the word was on the street, as they say in the stock field. The whisper was, watch out for them, you never know what they're going to do. And they were perfectly decent people, I found out, contrary to what I was taught. And I began to figure out that they don't have to suffer the condition they have. They don't have to be lepers, that there are cures of the condition. And I went ahead and proved that conclusively over a period of time, listing a number of cures involving UCLA Medical Center, diagnosed strangled voices, Scripps, Cedars-Sinai, Mayo Clinic, and so forth.
I was told by one of the leading researchers in the field, if not the leading researcher in the area of laryngology at the National Institutes of Health, her name is Dr. Christy Ludlow, that you have nothing new to report about spasmodic dysphonia. She was hosting a conference that was sponsored by the drug maker Allergan, who manufactures Botox, and I asked her, wouldn't you like to have an alternative approach that is offering cures to this condition? And she said, I know of Dr. Cooper's work. He has nothing new to report. What's your take on that?
I think she's a very, very gifted, humanitarian, compassionate woman, but she's on the wrong road. And she does not report a single cure ever. She is the NIH's, the National Institutes of Health, director of the Voice and Speech group section, neurology. And she has never reported a single cure of the condition. She can't comprehend that the condition spasmodic dysphonia is not a neurological problem, which she has as a paradigm, and that it's due to misuse of the voice, and that the misuse can be changed. And I report cures year after year dating back to the very early 1970s.
Well, Dr. Ludlow believes that this is a neurological condition. She calls it a dystonia.
Mm-hmm. So does the medical field.
Yes, well, I believe Dr. Ludlow's position on the condition of SD is very compatible and consistent with the medical paradigm.
She uses the term, she comes up with her theory as to the cause of the strangled voice spasmodic dysphonia as molecular biological cause.
Yes, that's correct. And what's interesting about that is that when you ask her to entertain the possibility that there's an alternative point of view here that can account and explain this condition, she basically...
That is non-medical.
That it's not medical, it's not neurological, it's not a dystonia, that it's not a biological problem, but
or
rather...
a gene-related problem, or a
not
reflux acid
And it's not
problem.
even a virus.
It's not a disease. It's not any of the above. These are all theories,
it's a function
folks, that the medical community presents to patients with SD.
That in fact this is a mechanical breakdown that's due to speaking incorrectly. She will not stand for it. She will not hear it. In fact, Dr. Ludlow not only has not produced a cure, as you've suggested over the last number of years, Dr. Ludlow, the leading researcher in this field from the National Institutes of Health, says there are no cures.
Well, so does the medical community.
That's her official position. There are no
But
cures.
she's just voicing and speaking on behalf of the medical community worldwide, saying there are no cures. I'm the only doctor in the world, folks, reporting cures of spasmodic dysphonia for over 30 plus years, probably about 35. I have had peer review. That's what they love to have. I published in 1980 on that. I have put it in my textbook. I wrote about it elsewhere. I've gone to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I've gone to Walter Reed Army Hospital. I've gone to major meetings in the country, the Pacific Voice Conference, 1998, and the list goes on, the litany is there. The medical community is deaf to cures, absolutely deaf to cures. They, in the medical community and in the academic world, the Christy Ludlows of the world, the Dr. Mitchell Brints of the world.
Let's talk a little bit about Dr. Brint, because
yeah,
I think no one really understands who he is. But
well,
Dr. Brint...
We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
The medical community has done something which I think is unfair to the individuals who suffer spasmodic dysphonia. They have guaranteed there are no cures. They put that in writing. There are no cures. I cannot guarantee a cure, but I can report I have cures because of what I'm doing. I'm changing the way the individual with the strangled voice talks and taking the voice out of the lower throat, where all medicine believes it's all in the lower throat, where SD is coming from, and they're calling it a dystonia, medical problem, a neurological problem. I'm saying that's poppycock. It's coming, the voice that they're talking about is a dysphonia. It means that they're talking wrong and they don't know it, and they need to change from the lower throat to the face where all good and great voices are. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, I think it's an interesting dilemma that they believe that this is an incurable problem, that there are no cures of this in the absence of cures. And I talked to Dr. Ludlow. He said Dr. Cooper has no proof of his cures. I said, Dr. Ludlow, with all due respect, he has before and after clinical case studies. Isn't that what you expect of somebody who is providing evidence, scientific evidence, that in fact there are cures of this condition? You have the patients before, voice, and he provides his treatment to them, and then you measure their voice afterwards. It seems to me that she's looking for something visual. When she asks for the word proof, she's not concerned about the way the patient's voice sounds before and after. She's looking for proof in a visual sense.
To the vocal cords.
They want to look at the vocal cords.
Well, let me give you.
Why is that?
Let me give you an answer to Dr. Ludlow, who talks about refusing to allow me on the program March, I think it's 8th, 2003. The explanation that I'm not acceptable to the NIH's Christy Ludlow is very simple, because I don't have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 at the FDA.
They're called clinical trials.
Yeah. I don't need phase 1, I don't need phase 2, and I don't need phase 3, because I explained to Christy Ludlow that this is not a medical problem, it's not a disease, it's not a gene-related problem, it's not a reflux acid problem, it's not a medical problem. It's a problem of voice misuse. It doesn't come under the aegis or the direction of the FDA. Now, the other thing I want to answer is Christy Ludlow is saying, in response to her concern and inquiry, I sent Gail Pace back to UCLA's Dr. Gerald Burke, who's the chairman there, and Bruce Garrett, who's his research assistant, very bright, very aware, and very competent in what he does. And Dr. Burke had diagnosed Gail Pace with abductor and adductor. That's the worst type of voice problem you can have. You are strangling. We have the before. It's a terrible voice. You can see the eyes popping out. You can see the face, all kinds of distortions and so forth. That's the strangled voice. Dr. Burke was very kind, because Gail Pace didn't want Botox and she didn't want surgery. So Gerald is a colleague of mine. I used to be on the staff and faculty at UCLA Medical Center before Gerald Burke was there. And he's very humanitarian, very compassionate, very decent fellow. He does believe that SD is a medical problem. So he sent her to me. And within 1 month, she had a perfectly normal voice. I sent her back. They did a video stroboscopy, which shows the vocal cords. This is what Christy Ludlow was asking you. Do the vocal cords change from the spastic vocal cords to the strangled, strained vocal cords, and so forth? And she had a perfectly normal appearance. Dr. Burke said, from what I understand, that she had a normal voice. She's been cured for 14 years.
But 14 years of the
I only saw her for 1 month.
Of those kind of symptoms is still not regarded as a cure in this field to Dr. Ludlow or others?
No, I think it is, but Ludlow is not aware of Gail Pace. So what I did is I sent Dr. Ludlow of the NIH, National Institutes of Health, a whole list of patients diagnosed at UCLA Medical Center, Head and Neck Division, not only under Gerald Burke, who diagnosed Gail Pace, but under Paul Ward, the former chairman, when he diagnosed Marjorie Whitman with SD, spasmodic dysphonia. Whitman was so severe that it was beyond belief that she could ever get her voice back, and he suggested surgery. That's Paul. I knew Paul well. I served on his faculty. But the point is that I sent Whitman back to Paul Ward. He had diagnosed her with the most severe SD imaginable. He characterized her as normal. She went on to talk normally, had a cure of SD by direct voice rehabilitation. Why can these individuals have a cure of a condition if it's neurological? I can't cure something that's neurological.
Actually, something about Dr. Ward after you sent.
I sent a whole list of 15 cases of cures and recoveries
when you sent
to Christy Ludlow.
Gail Pace went back to Dr. Ward. And he sent
to Gerald Burke.
To Gerald Burke, okay. Who was the patient that went back to
Marjorie Whitman.
Marjorie Whitman went back and
to Paul Ward.
Paul Ward believed that her voice was normal when she returned.
Yeah, the same as with Gail Pace.
Did he offer to give her any Botox injections after?
No, because Botox wasn't in at that time.
Okay. Did he offer to do any surgery after?
The surgery was suggested.
After she came back the second time?
No, before.
With her normal voice?
No, before. He said that the only answer to this thing is surgery.
Well, there was another patient by the name of Kim Ingstrom. And what's interesting about her is that she also received a course of direct voice rehabilitation by you and was cured of spasmodic dysphonia.
For 6 years now.
And then she returned back to her medical doctor who had administered Botox injections. This is a respected otolaryngologist.
He's very, very competent. He's one of the best.
Norman Cohegan at the University of Michigan Medical Center in
He's
Ann
the
Arbor.
chairman.
He's a big player in this field.
Yeah.
He and Dr. Ludlow know each other very well because it's Dr. Cohegan who told me that he believes. He said, with all due respect to Dr. Ludlow, who he believes is a very fine researcher, he said that he Dr. Hokigian can treat abductor spasmodic dysphonia with Botox.
Abductor, folks, is when it's too breathy. Adductor, they're coming to, they're talking like that, it's too tight. Abductor is too loose. So that's what they're arguing
So
about.
when Dr. Hokigian re-examined Kim Engstrom in his office and noted that her voice was perfectly normal.
He had diagnosed abductor and adductor, the same as Gail Pace,
Okay.
that Burke did. And she had a perfectly normal voice.
She presented again with a normal voice, and Dr. Hokigian asked her if she wanted and recommended to her that she have additional Botox
He had
treatments.
given her Hokigian, Dr. Norman Hokigian, had given her 2 Botox shots. It resulted, from what she reports, in bowed vocal cords. She had no voice. She had no voice. She came to me, spent a month with me, and has been cured of her condition for 6 years now. When she returned to Norman Hokigian, she was of the view that he would want to know of her recovery of voice, which he characterized as a normal voice.
As an
did
actual
Paul
cure.
Ward.
She was actually cured.
What's that? She was cured, yeah.
Kim Engstrom did not just recover her voice.
No, she was cured.
She was cured of the condition.
As the same as Marjorie Whitman,
Yeah.
is the same as Gail Pace. The interesting things is Christy Ludlow of the NIH, National Institutes of Health, is saying, show me the vocal cords. Well, Norman Hokigian, the ear, nose, and throat doctor, saw the vocal cords before and after. He had the chart, and she had normal vocal cords. She has a normal voice. Paul Ward saw Marjorie Whitman's before and after. She had normal vocal cords. Gerald Burke looked at Gail Pace's normal vocal cords, and she had normal vocal cords. So,
but here's the
point I'm making is I sent this much of this record back to Christy Ludlow, who is of the view that it can't be because there are no cures of spasmodic dysphonia. What she should say, if I may tell Christy, whom I like very much and I respect, she's a humanitarian, compassionate, and so forth, I would want her to understand that there are cures of the condition, but they're non-medical cures, as you've pointed out, and the academic people in my field don't have a single cure. And I'm the only one in the world, unfortunately, folks, to report ongoing cures for almost 35 years
You're
now.
missing something very key here, and I think everybody should pay attention to this, because it's kind of it's mildly amusing. You must find this amusing yourself, and that
I
is
find the whole field
that
amusing.
Kim Engstrom, when she returned to Dr. Hokigian's office, was told by Dr. Hokigian that she needed more Botox shots,
third Botox shot.
even though her voice, she was cured of SD, and her voice was entirely normal. And he said she needed that in order to deal with the underlying dystonia, the neurological pathology, the underlying pathology. Now, how can you have underlying neurological pathology or dystonia and have a normal voice at the same time? Are you some kind of trickster? Are you a magician?
Well, you have told me that there are people in the field who think I am, but I'm not. I'm a very simple guy. I'm a journeyman. People have characterized me as a genius, as a miraculous on the front page of the Wall Street Journal in 1980 for Norton Simon saving his voice. He suffered with a voice problem for 35 years, going from ear, nose, and throat doctor to ear, nose, and throat doctor and doctor to doctor. No, I am very basic. I'm very, very forward. I'm saying that nearly all bad and raspy voices and all spasmodic voices are coming from the lower throat. Change the placement of the voice to the face where all good and great voices are, because that's the answer to it. Use midsection breath control, and you've got a great portion of the mechanical attribute. But cures are not what the medical people understand. They cannot conceive that spasmodic dysphonia is not a neurological or medical problem. So the basic problem in the whole field is, if you have cures, Mort Cooper, then there's something wrong with you. And I reverse that and say, no, if I have cures of spasmodic dysphonia and I have 15 or more cures and recoveries diagnosed by UCLA staff and faculty as SD and proven to be SD, then it's something that's wrong with the field, not with me, but the field will not give up its turf, its ego, and its bottom lining, because you have another problem involved here, which is very simple. Botox may run you $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000 a Botox shot. there are now 4 to 10 Botox shots or more given to patients with spasmodic dysphonia each year and every year for your life. So it's possible that there is a bottom line interest for those who are giving Botox shots, other than the fact that the physicians are well-intentioned, humane, and compassionate. But I'm saying that may enter into the picture, because if you can give a Botox shot, it only takes a few minutes. And if you can give them in group, which is done at Wake Forest and other places, then there is a possibility, a consideration, and a concern we may ask: is it the money that's involved, or is it the paradigm that the physicians adhere to the fact that this is a neurological problem and it is insolvable, in the face of cures that I report year after year after year?
Well, and here's the problem with the word cure. A number of your colleagues have said that, yes, we'll acknowledge that you have patients that come in before and after. They come in with diagnosed from leading medical centers with spasmodic dysphonia, and they leave with a normal voice. But we don't believe that you're curing them, because we think that what you're dealing with is a rare condition which is called a psychogenic form of SD. That is, it's a psychological form. It's not neurologically based. This is what how the medical profession views it. And one of the leading luminaries in your field, Dr. Arnie Aronson, believes
of the
Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota, is insisting that the results that you're getting are because you're treating the psychogenic varieties. Now, what I find interesting about that is that Aronson knows your work, he knows what you do, and he knows that you do not work psychologically with patients. Is that true?
That's correct.
So you're not a psychologist or have some specialized psychotherapeutic techniques that you've developed?
I'm into mechanical change, the placement of the voice from the lower throat, where all SD is spasmodic dysphonia, to the face. What's interesting about this is from 1871, when Trow first described spasmodic dysphonia as nervous hoarseness, they were treating the condition psychiatrically, and they never reported one single cure. Never one. Even today, they don't have a single cure psychiatrically that I know of, which is saying, in essence, in the bottom line, that I must be a great psychiatrist, because none of the psychiatrists throughout all this time.
There was 90 years of psychiatric treatment.
Yeah, and not a single cure, but they don't have one now either.
But those were all well-trained people.
Yes,
that
and they were outstanding. So what is it
Desso Weiss, one of the great classic studies and researchers in the field, also a psychiatrist? And in your view, was Desso Weiss, did he himself have cures of spasmodic dysphonia?
Nobody has.
But he was a psychiatrist.
Yes. He was also a voice doctor, too.
So if he couldn't get a
No, they
cure
couldn't.
as a psychiatrist voice doctor, how can they expect you to?
No. Well, that's the irony of it. How can I, if Arnie is saying, Arnie Aronson of the Mayo Clinic is giving me credit for being a great psychiatrist because I'm treating...
Better than Desso Weiss.
Better than anybody in the psychiatric field, which I must say I don't deserve that accolade or honor or applause, because I couldn't do it. I'm not trained in the psychiatric field. I'm trained in psychotherapy, but I don't practice it. It doesn't interest me. It's too slow for me. I like to change what is hopeless, and I like to do it as quickly as possible, directly. That's why I call what I do is direct voice rehab. And what I do is I take the voice out of the lower throat and put it up in the face. The psychiatrists never knew that. The MDs, the medical doctors, never knew that and don't listen to voices. That's the irony. They are trained in pathology of voice. They're seeing the strangled vocal cords, and they're attributing that to a dystonia, a neurological medical problem, genes and so forth. And I'm not. My ears trained. I will say this. I will depend on my ears as they depend on their eyes to look at the vocal cords. I don't look at vocal cords. My eyes are bad. I rely on them to tell me how impaired the vocal cords are. But what I do is I change the voice so that it's placed up into the face with midsection control, and I also change the voice image and identity, which they don't listen and don't understand. That is the hidden agenda that people talk from and within. And that is the inner voice they're using, and it's always when they have spasmodic dysphonia in the lower throat. I take it out of there, and I put it up in the face with their consent, with their approval, and voluntarily have them change from the wrong voice, the spastic voice, the strangled voice to the face.
Well, what is it that we can do in the field, or what do you suggest for people to do to develop better listening skills? Because it seems like that's half the battle, is listening as a important step, if you will, for diagnosis.
Yeah.
You can't diagnose this condition by video stroboscopy, high-tech. People are in
You can diagnose it. You can say it's spasmodic dysphonia, strangled voice. You can diagnose it. I can listen to it and say it's spasmodic dysphonia. So can Herb Dito up in San Francisco, one of the greats in surgery.
Well, isn't it true that somebody could have rather inflamed vocal cords, or even vocal cords that appear on a visual inspection to be spasming, but to be talking with a relatively normal voice?
Not if they're spasming. If the vocal cords are spasming, you have spasmodic dysphonia. Many people have inflamed vocal cords. They have swollen vocal cords. They have bowed vocal cords.
What about growths on the vocal cords?
Growths on the vocal folds. Those are not. Those are there. That's a voice misuse problem, and the vocal cords are showing that. That's relatively easy to change, but they attribute that to reflux problems, and they're not listening to voices. What I do is I train the patient to listen to voices. Ironically, we drive our cars with our eyes, not our ears. But when you work on the voice, you have to train the ear. The eye is not the issue. We have 1 minute, Dr. Curtis, to sum up.
Well, here's the point. The cures of this condition, by anyone's standards, have to be measured, it seems. And the patients out there who are listening, okay, and watching the show, know that when you have a deformed and disfigured and disabled voice, you're not interested in knowing what your vocal cords look like after treatment. You're interested in knowing what your voice sounds like. So do you recommend that the profession, medical profession, and the speech pathology profession that's attendant to that, start listening more and looking and examining less?
I think both are very applicable and appropriate. Look at the vocal cords after they're cured. Look at the vocal cords before the patient is cured, and put them together. And when this happens, as I report ongoingly, then there must be another answer, and rely on a combination of looking at vocal cords to say it's a strangled voice. Listen to the voice. It's a clear voice. Decide for yourself that it's a new era. Thank you very much, folks. I'm Mort Cooper. This is Dr. John Curtis, my co-host. Change your voice, change your life. There are cures versus no cures in medicine. Bye-bye.
They keep one